All right. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of Texas AMA's podcast. My name is Alisha Gupta, and I'm currently serving in 2022-2023 as the chapter president here at UT Austin. This podcast is really a place for students around the nation who are interested in marketing or marketing related fields to have the opportunity to hear insights from industry professionals, companies, and people who are interested in recruiting for any such profession or career. We also have professors here who have mastered the balance between in-class expertise and hands-on experience that we'll be interviewing shortly. And for corporations out there, Texas AMA brings in over 25 companies a semester to our students to speak in person or virtually about the dexterity of a marketer across industries and what a career in marketing can result in. This podcast, as well as all relevant links, will be posted on YouTube and Spotify shortly, but be sure to check out texasama.org for the next release of the podcast, as well as follow our Instagram at TexasAMA to keep updated with the companies and professors and speakers that we bring in. Just a small aside note, I am here at Capital Factory in Austin, so if you see people walking behind, do not mind them. We are still running with this podcast and going. But today I have with me John Graff, currently the CMO of McCombs, as well as lecturer in the Department of Management. While he has just joined the academic community this past year, Professor Graff's career includes more than 25 years of senior management experience at a variety of technology companies here in Austin, with most of his experience in the areas of global marketing, product marketing, marketing communications, investor relations, and more. And Professor Graff spent most of his career at the National Instruments, where he built a reputation of building highly engaged teams, working cross-functional and organizational boundaries, and helping inspire a company culture that was recognized as the best place to work. During his tenure, National Instruments grew from $13 million in revenue to over $1 billion, which is an amount I can't even begin to fathom. And in addition to NI, Professor Graff has worked at Sonim Technologies, Explore Technologies, and Zebra Technologies, as well as Uhnder. And I hope I pronounced that last one right. Perfect.
You got it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hopefully that caught all of the wonderful bio, but if it did not and the voice is a little bit iffy because of all of the background noise, we'll be sure to put the bio in the description as well, so you guys can all look up all the things that Professor Graff has done. But with that, I'd love to start the interview and just have the conversation about you, your life, and all things marketing related.
Yes, I look forward to it. And thank you. Feel honored to be your first guest as you get this podcast going.
Of course. Well, why don't we just start off super simply? I'd love to know, and I'd love the listeners to know what your college experience was like, because currently I'm going to UT Austin and I'm loving it, but would love to know your college and how it ended up for where you are right now.
Well, so I also went to UT Austin. That's what brought me to Austin quite a few years ago, obviously, and have been here ever since. Now, full disclosure, my undergrad degree was actually in engineering. So I was at the Cockrell School of Engineering. But what kind of played out for me was while I liked engineering, I liked technology. Through my internships, and one in particular, I interned at IBM. I was assigned to a marketing group, a product marketing group. And that really kind of opened my eyes and, made me realize I didn't want to be an engineer working in a lab. I wanted to be involved in the business, involved with customers. And that's really what kind of set me on that path.
That's awesome. I think I have heard so many similar stories like that when talking to marketing professionals is, marketing doesn't get a lot of coverage off the bat as to what a career could look like until you really get that hands-on experience where you're kind of just thrown into, a job or an experience where you're needed to use marketing to be able to, either sell a product or service, or you're working with the marketing team on go-to-market strategy, or, you're posting content, whatever that might look like now. So it's interesting to hear that story and what it has amounted to you, like up to being CMO of McCombs. But, it looks like you did start your career as an applications engineer, I believe, for National Instruments, and you did your degree in engineering, gradually working your way up to VP of Corporate Marketing for National Instruments. So, I'm just wondering, could you tell us a little bit more about why marketing was initially appealing as a career path? And I know you said, you just kind of were thrown into it, but then once
Yeah.
you were in marketing as a field and a job, what was that thing that made you say that this is, something that I could keep going and doing for the rest of my career?
Well, it's yeah, no, great question. And for me, the internship kind of opened my eyes, to the business side of it. And I won't necessarily say, oh, I was destined for marketing, but I knew I wanted to be, on the customer facing side, the business side. So the first job out of school, at NI, you started as an application engineer, and that was really a training ground. And what you were doing is you were working with customers, and it was effectively tech support, but it was training because you learned the products, and then you learn the customers. What are they trying to do with the products? What are the problems they're having? And then everyone at NI came through the AE program, and then back then you either went into sales or you went into product management, product marketing.
Okay.
And that's the door, I went through. And now early, like you mentioned in the intro, when I started was 13 million. So we didn't really, we were a bunch of engineers. The founder was an engineer that had done research out of UT, had no prior business experience. And, we had some great technology, great products. But the marketing was a bunch of engineers doing marketing.
Right.
And it got to a point where the founder and CEO, he said, hey, we got to start thinking about, our brand and our message. Back then it was just, hey, we have this product and we have that product. And so he came to me one day and he goes, John, you seem to be pretty good at communicating. When we were putting together messaging or press releases or events, I was the one that kind of worked with all the other product managers, product marketing. And, he said, you seem to be good at that. So you're still going to be a product manager, but your product is going to be the company. So they changed my title to be corporate marketing manager. And really what my function was working between the technical product managers and product marketers, and then our professional marketing communications staff. And, I joke about, engineers sometimes, right, aren't necessarily the best communicators. And so a lot of what I was doing was just helping bring these two groups. I could understand the product and technology side and explain that to the marketers, but the marketers had some, excellent points about communication and how to write good copy and how to best present, the value of National Instruments. And so I could explain that back to the engineers. So in a way, and I've told some people this, I started doing this 30 years ago. And even as my titles and responsibilities changed, it's still a lot of my job is still that same, fundamental thing is helping bring together, the different groups and align on messaging, align on our marketing strategy.
Right. That makes total sense to me. I think, I mentioned I was here at Capital Factory, and I hope the noise isn't too loud, but here at Capital Factory, I was just at a startup event, and I was actually talking to someone who worked at Oracle, and she essentially was working with the engineering team, I should say. But her main job was essentially kind of like that, like a liaison between the engineering team and communicating their needs to the corporate side, and to HR and to management. And which is very similar in the connection that we need to form when you're working at a technology company between product versus communicating that product to a certain customer group or even to the rest of the team so they can further communicate or sell that product or service. And that seems to be more of a trend that we're seeing these days.
Oh, absolutely. I'll give you an example of even in this most recent, I just stepped in as the interim CMO at McCombs, and you think, okay, well, it's not a product. It's a service, right? Education. Yeah, very huge. And all these audiences, right? Prospective students, current students, alumni,
Yeah,
corporations that we want to recruit, donors, peer institutions. So it's still the same thing, though. It's like
yeah,
there's all this great stuff happening in McCombs, but how do you package it in a way that you can communicate effectively to these different audiences?
right.
So,
Yeah,
that's one of the things for me that whether, most of my career, it's been doing that for technology, but, even doing it now for McCombs School of Business, it's the same concepts. And I just like that. To me, you're being a connector and
yeah,
bringing together,
100%.
the different people, the different views, the different inputs, but helping drive people to a consensus on, what we need to do.
Yeah, I think that's super powerful, just framing this idea of marketing and your role in marketing as a connector. I think, oftentimes we're kind of confused, and I'm speaking we as behalf of marketing majors, but I'm sure anyone in, looking to go towards a marketing related field is confused when asked that question of, what is my skill? What is my primary skill or job other than creating content or other than, just working
Yeah.
on SEO? And it's how can we really brand ourselves and brand what marketing people do for companies. And I do think the word connector is so powerful when using that branding term for yourself, especially if you're out there looking or recruiting for a job. And AMA actually works with the Department of Marketing at UT Austin to be able to put on these events for students to be able to figure out what career that they're interested in. And our slogan for the past 2 years has been marketing is not color pencil. And so it's erasing that notion in people's mind that, we're not
Yep.
just color pencils and we're not, just only focused on the creative side, but really bridging a field between creative and marketing as science and being able to communicate that. So I guess to that point, a lot of our students are interested in using marketing in different industries, and that can look like very different things. You were at both Uhnder and Sonim
Yep.
Technologies. I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit on how do you enter an industry that maybe you don't know too much about, or even if you have some background in engineering, you're entering as a marketer. How do you sell yourself, and how do you learn to communicate the technicalities of a product as well as the intricacies of the corporate side of marketing as well?
No, great question. And, if I build off of, we talked about connecting,
Yeah.
to me, I like C words. The next one is curiosity. And,
Mm,
the world needs marketers. There are so many companies, whether it's products, services, whether it's technology or health or academia, that need help telling their story, and actually need help putting together their story than telling their story. And so, to step into any new area, I think you just have to have this natural curiosity. I told my kids when all three of mine went to UT and have graduated now. I tell my current students, what you're mainly learning while at university is how to learn, right? But
right.
the learning doesn't stop once you get handed that degree and you walk across the stage. And these days with the pace of change and technology impacts every industry. So to me, the marketers that really thrive just have this curiosity and they want to learn. And so if you walk into a technology company, like I walked into Uhnder and they were just coming out of stealth mode. It was a startup and they made digital radar technology for cars to do autonomous driving and advanced safety. And they had some breakthrough technology. Now, I was not an expert in it, but to me, I was just so intrigued and I was curious. I wanted to understand how their technology worked. How was it different from how it's always been done? And through that curiosity, one, you're building trust with your, product teams or
Yeah.
sales teams, whoever you're talking to. But you're learning, and that learning. Then, you mentioned content. To me, the best marketers, you have to fall in love with what it is you're selling.
Yeah.
The product,
Very true.
service, and if you have that curiosity and if you love that, then that's going to come through in the content you produce. I read something recently. It was like, if you don't love it, then you'll produce content, but it's not going to have that, same spark and be as engaging. Because we've all stood in front of or seen people speak, and you see the passion and how excited they are. Maybe, down a Capital Factory, right? You see a lot of entrepreneurs and they're passionate, and that comes through. Well, as marketers, we have to do that, but we have to do it through our words, through, presentations, through social media, through our websites. But, we have to try to convey that same energy and excitement, because otherwise it's just content. Anybody can produce content.
Very true statement. I'm taking a digital marketing class right now, and we're looking at mass examples of companies that have done it right and companies that have just failed with their digital marketing content. And it goes a lot more beyond the aesthetics. It goes a lot more beyond, the words that are being written on a piece of paper, but it's the idea, the feeling, the moments that the customers are living in. And there's a ton of psychology behind that as well. It's a lot more than just what is being written or said, but how it's delivered, the timing of when it's delivered, and really, if the marketing and the marketing department feels connected, like you were talking about, to the rest of the company as a whole, and is not just a segment out of the side, then you really see the message of the brand and the idea and vision of the brand come to life a lot easier. So I think next time anyone asks, what are the strengths of marketers in my interview, I'm going to say curiosity, creativity, and connectivity. And we're putting that in the headlines for the podcast title as well, because I think that's an amazing statement.
Yeah, those are just great areas to focus on. And to build off what you're saying, even though my career is mainly in technology, I still liked learning and seeing what kind of marketing was done in other industries. And I was mainly B2B, but sometimes, I would go to conferences, I would meet peers, I would read up about the latest marketing being done in the B2C world and say, you know what, that's something we could maybe carry over and use here. So, you mentioned digital marketing, social marketing. So much is changing that you got to be careful that you don't just have blinders on, only looking at your industry, your competitors. Sometimes there's, we used to call it creative swiping, right? You see some idea that might be consumer, something they're doing on the web or social media, and you'd say, man, we could use that same concept to engineers in the technology world.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the statement that a lot of people are saying now is, creativity is never original. And I don't think it should be original. And we have a lot of debates here in the marketing department at UT in classes about, what's stealing or what's giving credit when you're, taking an idea for a campaign, or how SEO is done and what your advertisement looks like. But really it is, you adapt and you evolve. And you adopt something else and then you evolve it, and you kind of grow through that process of learning not only the trends that are happening at the moment, but then what works for your company and what doesn't, based on other industry analysis of what you can align your company or your product to, essentially. But I think when I think of all of the intricacies of marketing and everything that goes into not only the communication of it but the back end analytics of it, it can be very overwhelming. And you mentioned, putting blinders on and focusing on one specific thing is not always the best thing to do. And you really do need to see the whole picture when it comes to marketing. But for someone who's recently graduating pretty soon, or even someone out there right now who's trying to find a job or switch industries, I think getting a job as a general marketing person can be pretty difficult. And just learning all the functions of marketing can be difficult. So I think that's something I really struggle with is, especially as I enter the workforce, balancing specializing versus broadening my knowledge. So how do you really get to, cover all your bases, so to speak, when it comes to general marketing knowledge, or when it's needed to, go down and specialize and really say, I am the master of SEM, and that is what I'm going to get a job in? Where's the balance, and how do you know when to strike that balance?
I mean, it's a good question, and actually, at the end of the semester, I always talk about this subject with my class because it ties back to this. You always keep learning; you don't
Right.
stop. And the answer is really going to be unique to each of us. And what I tell people, you'll always be, oh, should I have done this or should I have done that? Or you get to a point, you have family, you're like, well, should I spend more time with my family than work? Uh, you got to pick a door and a path and you go with it, but then realize you can always change. So like for me, when the web was becoming a big thing, I dove deep. And at NI, we were one of the first 25,000 companies in the world to have a website. And so, I was learning about HTML, I was handwriting code, so
Yeah.
I had to go, pretty deep. But then, as it got traction and was working, we built up a team and a staff so I could back out and look and say, okay, how do we make sure the web's being integrated into our whole business?
Right.
You touched on a couple other things. I mean, one's data. The biggest thing, and I think it's the coolest thing about marketing now, is we have data. I mean, when I
Mhm.
started and got into marketing, a lot of it was opinions, and that's why there'd be so much conflict because,
Yeah.
I think we should say this, or I think, now you can try things, you can do A/B testing, and within 24 hours, you can have data. I mean, it's just amazing. And to me, and maybe this is a little of the engineer in me, but I think back to that curiosity, and then you're doing programs. So even as I walk in, a CMO at McCombs, I'm asking questions about the programs they're running, and then one of the directors there used to work for me at one of my prior companies, and she knows how I work. And so she gave me logins into Google Analytics and Salesforce and Marketo. And I go in there and I start pulling out data like, hey, had you guys noticed this? And, you know, again, sometimes, everyone gets so busy doing things and
Yeah.
that ability to step back and say, well, wait a minute, let's look at the data. And
Right.
like here's another thing. Everyone has ideas of new web content, new web pages, but uh, then I'm like, well, let's go look at the data because sometimes they're talking about pages that I won't name names, but we had somebody recently, and I went and looked, and I was like, yeah, you had all of 8 visits, and so just meaning. Hey, appreciate the idea, but we have to focus over here because we're getting
Right.
80,000 visits to this page, and we need to make it a better experience.
Yeah.
So to bring that data in and be informed, and like I said, to try things. Yeah. The other thing that's great in this day and age of marketing is it's so easy and inexpensive to try things.
Yeah.
So we place ads, we do social posts, and we do A/B testing. And like I said, then we get back together and hey, which one worked? And
Right.
we knock one out and we just go to the next test. So it's almost like this constant testing, and you're just iterating and slowly making your messaging and your creative that much better and that much more impactful.
Right. Yeah. And I think, it's not only because data, like influx of data at this point when we have, especially when we're working on something like, Google Analytics, or we're taking, any page or doing A/B testing, and you can run tons and thousands of iterations of that based on whatever service. But it's also, what data am I specifically looking for? And then also knowing how to extract that data and actually use it. I
Yeah.
was listening to a podcast recently, and it made me laugh a little bit because it was about chat GPT. And that's like the high topic
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
all my classes, all of our syllabi, but also just, the fear in people that it might take over your job, and it might take over what we're living for, what we're learning for, because it makes things so much more easily accessible. And so the people who are doing that work are sensing this fear. And the reason I laughed was because we just the day before had talked about how chat GPT can be used as a tool just like any other data system is being used as a tool.
Yep.
And marketers are one of the best people to be able to take this tool and expedite the research process. So then we're focusing on the convening, on the creativity. And so it's really just taking the data in marketing and making it accelerated. So then we have better focus on the creativity while still allowing the bridge for the two. And so at this point, I was like, what better major to be that combines creativity and data together? But I think that's just a phenomenal thing for us.
Yeah, we were in a conversation recently with other faculty at UT, and it was about Chat GPT and marketing. And,
Right.
One aspect, and this resonated with me, is that, first I'll say the Chat GPT. I mean, I think it's exciting because it's making people rethink. I think, is that the answer, their technology? No, I was listening to a podcast this morning, but it's version 1. There's a lot of hype.
Right.
But AI will have a big impact. But, the thought is, hey, all this AI is going to make the data analytics easier, but the business analytics and this is where marketers come in, right? Because you have to take that and you still have to put it into the insight and explain it to, what does it mean for the business and what are we going to do different? Maybe someday AI tools will do that, but I think we're a long way. I still think that's where there'll be the human value is, really pull the insights and then make a recommendation, hey, based on this and what we're learning, our AI system and its analysis of, whatever our marketing campaigns, but then, somebody has to say, well, this is what we should do different, propose and say why, and, use the data and the insight accordingly. So, I think out of all these, there's the fear, but the flip side is the opportunity. And I definitely think there'll be lots of opportunity.
Right. I totally agree with that. I think it's all about overcoming fears in general, but specifically if you can get in front of your fear at this particular instance and know how to manage it and use it. And again, that whole thing about being more curious and leaning into things that we don't know too much about and being able to practice and learn. So my goal, not New Year's goal, because New Year's is a little bit past, but my goal since ChatGPT has spiked was to just spend some more time to be able to just learn and use it and learn and iterate. Because I think especially college students get so busy and worked up with everything going on in life that we need to step back sometimes and just learn and observe life and see what's going on and see how it can be applied to us. But that was just a little side note for my intention of the day. We have a couple more minutes left. I just wanted to end off with something really simple about UT Austin and just how much you love UT and being CMO of McCombs. But I would love to know, the transition over to UT Austin from being in a corporate world. How was that for you? And how has marketing been revolutionary in this job for yourself?
Yeah, and I'll step back first because, I first got involved with McCombs as a lecturer. And, it's part of the strategy by the school to bring more, they call it the professional track, right? So there's outstanding faculty and the research they do. But, right, the professional track, we bring, 30 years of experience. And if, for students to be able to get both, and, for me, it was great. I find it very rewarding. One, all the students, you guys are just so bright. It's so much harder to get into UT these days than, when I went. And you see the curiosity and you see, this just desire to learn and, and go forward. So, there's an element of, hey, giving back, and that's part of the mission, obviously, of any academic institution. So then when the opportunity came up for the CMO, I was like, oh, well, this is great because, again, leverage all my marketing experience, be that connector, because there's so much going on at McCombs. And then the curiosity, it's great sitting down. There's so many smart people all walking to halls of McCombs, from the faculty to the staff, people that have 30 years. And so to just, again, curiosity and learn about the academic side of things, learn about what the challenges are. We actually, for McCombs, we offer so much, so many programs, and right, that almost can be tough of how do we make sure the right audiences, know what we offer. The dean, she comes to me regularly and she goes to an alumni event, and it's somebody that graduated from McCombs, 20 or 30 years ago. And they're like, oh, I didn't know we had this program or, this center. And so she'll come back and say, there's your marketing challenge. We need our alumni to better know, what all McCombs offers. So it's fun. I mean, I'm having a blast. But that element of being able to give back, right? Because whether it's the students I have directly or all the students coming through McCombs, I mean, it's the future business leaders, marketing leaders, and corporate leaders. So, that's fun to know, hey, maybe I'm having a little bit of impact as all these bright kids go off into their future endeavors.
Well, that's, I think, a wonderful note to leave off of, not only for AMA and the marketing department, but UT as a whole. Always hook 'em. And thank you so much, Professor Graff. It was such a pleasure to speak with you today. We will leave with creativity, connectivity, and curiosity for this podcast today. And just to close it off really briefly, I want to say make sure that you are following our podcast at texasama.org or on Instagram. And if you have any questions about careers in marketing, events, or if you're a company that's interested in coming in and speaking to our students, please feel free to email us at ama@ut@gmail.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you.